We present our fully costed budget, checked and cleared by the excellent finance team, the award-winning S&P rated finance team, and we thank them for their work. I'm now about 21 months into this role. 21 months of watching the Mayor grandstand, misrepresent, and duck responsibility. His immature attempts to demonise those of us who question or oppose his PR machine, a PR machine which has record funding, by the way, is the lowest form of politics. So let's be clear on what we are going to do with this amendment. An amendment which helps Londoners with the cost of living and breathing. We will stop the ULEZ expansion so that people can decide in a 2024 election. We will freeze Sadiq Khan's council tax hike, his planned 9.7% increase, and leave people's hard-earned money in their pockets. We will tackle air pollution where it is, instead of taxing people where it isn't. And to be clear, our amendment protects the school meals programme, along with police and fire funding. The Mayor says otherwise, and that is simply a falsehood. We are proposing these clear policies to help Londoners at this difficult time. The Mayor's tax-grabbing Canberra expansion, ULEZ, will hit the poorest Londoners the hardest. It will kill off small business and punish public servants. 4 Labour MPs, the Federation of Small Business, Lib Dem councils, county council, and even some unions have urged the Mayor to think again. The case against ULEZ is overwhelming. Indeed, there's an actual case against it in the courts. If we look at the data from the Jacobs assessment highlighting the negligible impact on air quality, the figures used by the Mayor around air quality are disputed. Indeed, some of his adverts are currently under investigation by the Advertising Standards Authority. The missing responses, 5,000 of them, that somehow disappeared off the consultation. Evidence of dodgy briefings and predetermination, further highlighted this morning with the information that the Mayor purchased the ULEZ cameras before he'd even begun consulting. But most importantly, it's that Londoners said no, and the Mayor should listen. The City Hall Conservatives will stop ULEZ. We'll freeze Khan's council tax hike. Sadiq Khan controls £20 billion of Londoners' money in his budget. He's got reserves of £2.1 billion, which is, I think, a budget comparable to the Home Office, if not bigger. He doesn't need to make people's lives harder. We are generally not in favour of spending reserves on one-off items, but we do recognise this challenge, a challenge that the Mayor himself recognises. His school meals policy remains intact in our amendment. The Mayor reckons with this one-off fund, he'll provide Londoners with £440, so he knows that people need the money. It's confusing, then, that he's chosen to add to that burden with a 10% council tax rise. There's been a 57% increase in his council tax since he took office. And that £440 for the school meal money, by the way, that's wiped out by about 30 car journeys in his new expanded ULEZ zone. He gives with one hand and he takes with the other. He is the gift that keeps on taking. The City Hall Conservatives would freeze the council tax. And finally, we are proposing a more targeted anti-pollution solution. A solution that does not shunt the cost onto those least able to afford it. We'll deploy £50 million of funding to local boroughs to tackle the problems with local solutions. The City Hall Conservatives will tackle air pollution where it is, instead of taxing where it is not. In short, our budget and amendment is an amendment for Londoners. It recognises that times are tough. It recognises that City Hall can do more. It trusts local authorities to deal with local issues. We're proud of this amendment and we hope you'll support us.
Thank you, Chair. And I want to thank my colleague, Assemblymember Fortune, for putting forward a fantastic amendment from City Hall Conservatives. One of the measures in our amendment corrects a fundamental wrong, which is that the Mayor has no democratic mandate to expand the ultra-low emission zone to the whole of London. It was not in his 2021 manifesto, and in fact in a July 21 written answer he said he had no plans to expand the ultra-low emission zone to outer London. And when he did bring forward these plans in March 22 and ran a consultation, he ignored the results of his own consultation. And it's all timed to come in at the end of August to avoid that 2024 mayoral election. And I can tell you, people feel this democratic deficit. Just earlier today, I was speaking to people from Sutton, from Bromley and from Havering who had travelled up to City Hall because they feel that lack of democratic accountability. Residents I spoke to in the lobby of City Hall said they would never expect to be coming in to City Hall to hear about anything, but it's this expansion. They feel that they have not been heard. And our amendment will right this wrong. It will give Londoners the decision, and I commend the amendment to the Assembly.
Hear, hear.
I wanted to speak on the Conservative amendment that's put before you today, which has had the seal of financial approval and the financial soundness from our wonderful GLA officers. And it addresses the concerns of Londoners from north to south, east to west, old to young, and everyone in between. When I speak to people at weekends and through my emails and constituency work, they want their council tax frozen. They're concerned about council tax rising and growing costs. They want us to do work to invest in clean air and support a better air quality across London. And they want us to scrap the £12.50 charge on the most vulnerable people in our society, the smallest businesses and the smallest charities. And I've had a limited resource base from the polling base from the announcement on Monday, but I understand that people want us to protect the free school meals as well. And so that is what this achieves. So in short, and to quote Hot Chocolate, everyone's a winner, baby. That's the truth. And the Mayor would have you believe that it's not possible to freeze council tax. But if we look across the UK, if we look across London even, we see that it's not just Conservatives that are achieving this, but Labour as well. And so we know it is possible to freeze council tax this year, especially when people are struggling financially. And so I hope that members of the Assembly can support us in doing that. I wanted to speak because I know that it was mentioned earlier, and I think this is going to be the recurring theme, that if you vote against the budget at the end of the day, you're voting against free school meals, which obviously is the Labour line of taking people for complete idiots, because they know that when you vote against the budget, you are voting against a number of issues within that. And if that is a line they would take, then that means that Labour members opposite who have sat as opposition councillors have voted against social care, have voted against new homes, and have voted against capital investment projects in their borough. Or do they accept that when they voted against those budgets on councils, they were voting on the thing in the round? So tell me, did you vote against social care in your boroughs? Did you vote against new homes? Did you vote against capital projects in your back garden? Or did you vote against budgets in the round? Because when you make that point, remember you are being an absolute hypocrite if that is what you are going to say. Because we are putting for you an opportunity to make sure that not only do we protect free school meals, but we make sure that we don't give with one hand and take with the other. This is the absolute best amendment for London, and it has achieved everything that the Mayor says he wants to do, but fails to do. And I hope that everyone around the Assembly will vote for it today. Thank you.
Well said.
First of all is the amendments on behalf of City Hall Conservatives moved by Assemblymember Fortune. I'm going to call members in alphabetical order with the Deputy Chair and Chair listed last. I'm going to ask members to indicate whether they are voting for, against or abstaining. Just a reminder, at this stage, amendments are required to have 2/3 majority of Assembly members present and voting in order to be passed. So that means 2/3 of the Assembly members in the room, and abstentions aren't counted towards that 2/3 majority. So, Assemblymember Ahmad.
Against.
Assemblymember Bailey.
For.
Assemblymember Baker.
Against.
Assemblymember Berry.
Against.
Assemblymember Best.
For.
Assemblymember Bakari.
Against.
Against or for?
Sorry, Assemblymember Bakari.
Against.
Thank you. Assemblymember Clark.
Against.
Assemblymember Cooper.
Against.
Assemblymember Desai.
Against.
Assemblymember Devonish.
For.
Assemblymember Duval.
Against.
Assemblymember Fortune.
For.
Assemblymember Garrett.
For.
Assemblymember Hall.
For.
Assemblymember Harani. Oh, no, sorry, apologies from Assemblymember Harani. Assemblymember McCartney.
Against.
Assemblymember Moema.
Against.
Assemblymember Pigeon.
Against.
Assemblymember Polanski.
Against.
Assemblymember Prince.
For.
Assemblymember Rogers.
For.
Assemblymember Russell.
Against.
Assemblymember Sheikh.
Against.
Assemblymember Boff, Deputy Chair.
For.
And Assemblymember Dr Sahota, Chair.
Against.
Thank you, members. That is 15 votes against, 9 votes in favour. That amendment falls.
We have another amendment which has been tabled by the City Hall Conservatives, and I'll ask Assemblymember Fortune to move the amendment.
Thank you very much. This is just one last go. It's building on the conversations we've had earlier about our primary responsibility, which is making sure we're looking after Londoners. Views of the reasoning of the implementation of ULEZ aside, it's undeniable it's going to hit people. It's going to hurt people in the pocket. It's going to close businesses. It's going to stop people moving around and seeing friends and family. So there needs to be support. Following on from what we heard from earlier about investing in buses, this amendment goes further. It asks for more money that can be invested in those outer London routes. And if you look at the P-Tower rates of some of these groups, the public transport accessibility levels in some areas, still ranked or rated as 1A, 1A being an indication of extremely poor access. And if you look at areas we've highlighted, Graham Park Way in Barnet, if you look at Elm Avenue in Ealing, Foxhole Road in Greenwich, Heather Lane in Hillingdon, all of these are 1A rated P-Tile areas. Grove Park, that little area in Lewisham, just between Bromley and Lewisham. Wilkins Close in Merton, Allane Park in Southwark, Moreland Way in Waltham Forest, Moulton Road in Wandsworth. These are areas of very low and poor accessibility. And what we are asking for, pleading for, is your support to help us invest in these areas to improve public transport networks. And that's it.
I think we have established as part of today's debate that the £100 million in the Transport Services Reserve Fund is genuinely available to be spent, and this seems like as good a way to spend it as any. So I think we will be supporting this amendment today.
Yes, we will be happy to support this, given that our amendment that was going to use this same pot of money has fallen. Let's try again. Let's try doubling it again. Let's go for £100 million to go into buses in outer London. What is not to like? How can you vote against that? This is the same reserve and being used over the same time period that the Mayor intends to run down that reserve. So why don't we spend it on something the Assembly wants, that Londoners in outer London really want and desperately need? We're very happy to support this amendment today.
Why do we stand for the London Assembly? You know, why do we go through all that hassle of standing for the London Assembly if, when it comes to the point of actually being able to take a decision that changes the lives of Londoners for the better, that we decide no, that we decide that it's what we'd rather do is just follow the boss, do what the boss says, never disagree, never challenge.
It's no secret we want the ULEZ to stop. We think the problem is well identified, but we think it's the wrong solution. And we're trying to offer others. But in the months I've been at this assembly, I've seen this mayor ram stuff through. You know, the very fact that we're in this building when a lot of members opposite don't want to be in this building because we moved from the old City Hall has demonstrated that. So we know we're up against a force with this. And you're right. We need to mitigate. We need to help. We need to support people. And that's why I think it's a shame, the response we've got. So what would residents in Barnet, Ealing and Greenwich today have seen? They'd have seen the members opposite vote against toilets. a very reasonable and costed proposition. What would they have seen in Hillingdon and Lewisham and Merton? They'd have seen voting against scrappage schemes. Another perfectly reasonable solution to the problem that's coming down the line. In Waltham Forest, in Southwark, in Wandsworth, they're now going to see them vote against investing in buses. And there's no reason to do that. We've identified the problem. We've identified the money. What possible reason is there to vote against this, to vote against your communities, investing in your communities? What's the possible point of doing it, other than the fact that you're probably under orders from the Mayor? Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember Fortune.
We move to the vote on this amendment. As before, I will ask members alphabetically for their votes. Assemblymember Ahmad?
Against.
Assemblymember Bailey?
For.
Assemblymember Baker?
Against.
Assemblymember Berry?
For.
Assemblymember Best?
For.
Assemblymember Bakari?
For.
Assemblymember Clark?
Against.
Assemblymember Cooper?
Against.
Assemblymember Desai? Assemblymember Devonish? Assemblymember Duval? Assemblymember Fortune?
For.
Assemblymember Garrett?
For.
Assemblymember Hall?
For.
Assemblymember Hirani? Oh, sorry. Apologies from Assemblymember Hirani. Assemblymember McCartney? Assemblymember Moema?
Against.
Assemblymember Pigeon?
For.
Assemblymember Polanski?
For.
Assemblymember Prince?
For.
Assemblymember Rogers?
For.
Assemblymember Russell?
For.
Assemblymember Sheikh?
Against.
Assemblymember Boff, Deputy Chair?
For.
And Assemblymember Dr Sahota, Chair.
Against.
Thank you, Assembly members. That was 24 Assembly members voting, so the threshold for approval is 16 votes in favour. There were 14 votes in favour and 10 votes against. That amendment falls.